Jerusalem Day. Just this past week, we celebrated Jerusalem Day. This is a picture from this year of waves, flagging, and parades going through Jerusalem in celebration of the reunification of Jerusalem in 1967. And so I want to go over a little bit of the history of Jerusalem. What does the Bible have to say and history have to say about Jerusalem? First, it was a Canaanite city inhabited by the Jebusites. King David captured the city around 1000 BCE, and David made Jerusalem the capital of his kingdom. Long before that, even back in the time of Moses, hundreds of years before that, Moses had commanded Joshua and the tribes of Israel when they entered the land that the Jebusite city of Jebus should be taken as one of the cities and one of the territories. And for hundreds of years, no one bothered to take it, but David had his eye on it. He was living in Bethlehem, just a stone throw almost away, a slingshot throw maybe away from Jerusalem. And I'm sure as he was out with the sheep, he would see the walls and see the city and be thinking about that city. God said we should have that city, and one day we're going to have that city. And then when he became king, the door opened up and told the men, whoever go up the water shaft and capture the city will be my captain. And he must have known about that, because it was one of the reasons they've just recently found, even just about 2 weeks ago, it's got some more inkling of the size of the walls that were there. And it was massive. And it's up on, Jerusalem is surrounded on three sides. It's a peninsula surrounded, the city of David, not modern Jerusalem, but what was then Jebus site city. It was surrounded on three sides by very steep cliffs, or really just valleys. And so you'd have to climb up those, your army would have to climb up those and fully exposed, and then come to the walls and try and scale the walls. And so you couldn't just go up to it with a battering ram. It was not level at all. But David knew, maybe as a young child, researching around and scurrying around, he saw the water shaft that led water into the city, and you just go up that and we can conquer. And so that's what his nephew Joab did, and they conquered and became the city. And after David died, Solomon built the temple. The first solid temple, first permanent temple, with all the decorations that we've been studying over the last few weeks. But then in 586 BCE, Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, destroyed Jerusalem and the temple and took us as exiles to Babylon. Just 50 years later, in 537 BCE, Cyrus, the king of the Persians, conquered Babylon, and thus after that he permitted us to return to Jerusalem and rebuild our temple. And it was prophesied hundreds of years before, by name, Cyrus was mentioned in the book of Isaiah, hundreds of years before that he would come, that there would be a man named Cyrus. He'd be like a prince, he'd be like a savior. Actually, he's called the Mashiach, the anointed one, would come and would allow us. And he fulfilled that role. And so maybe it was as a result of seeing those prophecies. Maybe Daniel shared those prophecies with him and helped convince him to let us go back. And so we went back under the Persians and started to rebuild the temple under Nehemiah and Ezra. So we started to rebuild the temple. And then in 333 BCE, Alexander the Great took over the Medo-Persian kingdom, and he added Jerusalem and Israel to the Greek Empire. And the Greeks ruled over us for another few hundred years until 165, when the Maccabees, under Judah Maccabee, helped deliver us and set up the Maccabean or the Hasmonean kingdom, a dynasty. And they ruled for about 100 years until 63 BCE, when Rome came through and took over that dynasty, that kingdom. And Rome continued to rule, and Rome set up several Herod and several leaders to rule over Israel and rule over Jerusalem. And Herod the Great ruled from 40 BCE to about 4 BCE. And he rebuilt Jerusalem, and he helped to modify and amplify and decorate and the temple and the Temple Mount. And in some ways it was very good to us, but in some ways it was very cruel and very mean. It was under the Roman rulers and Roman governors that as they remained in control. That's again some of the building structures that Herod built on the entrance going into Jerusalem. And take note of that. We're going to take a look at this picture in another few minutes. But this archway right here, this portion right here, we're going to see that in another few minutes. See how high up it is from the ground level all the way up to just about to the top of the Temple Mount. Herod built, again, that and the entering in. But again, under Pontius Pilate, the Romans persecuted us and crushed us down and even executed Yeshua HaMashiach, Yeshua the Messiah. And then the Romans destroyed the temple about 30-something years after that in 70 A.D. And then another 60 or so years after that, a revolt was begun by Bar Kokhba, a Jewish man, revolted against the Romans in 135. He was crushed down. He had some coins minted, and his desire was to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. So he had coins minted with an emblem of Jerusalem on it and the temple on it. But he lost and crushed out. After that, the Romans dispersed us throughout the Roman kingdom, exiled us, outlawed us to live in Jerusalem. And then around the 4th century, after the Roman Empire was collapsed and in a sense replaced by Roman Catholicism and papal Roman rule, they came in to Jerusalem and the areas and started to build churches, including shrines, including this one here. This is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is quite an ugly, gaudy building the way it looks now. I don't know what it looked back in 4 BC when it was originally built. Or rather, 4 CE, rather. The 4th century. I'm sorry, 4th century. So 400 or so, 400 or 500 CE. And there were lots of pilgrimages and other sites they built in commemoration of the various events that had taken place in these areas. The city remained under that Byzantine rule until about 638, when the Muslims took it over and they built the Dome of the Rock on the Temple Mount. They did that in 688. The Crusaders then, so it went from Byzantine or Christian hands to Muslim hands, and then it went back to Christian hands under the Crusaders. The Crusaders came through and killed both Jews and Muslims. The First Crusade was in 1099, and they came in and again established Jerusalem. And if anyone questions what one of the problems that Jews have with crosses, this picture is a good illustration of the Crusaders wearing crosses on their backs and on their fronts, as well as on their shields, as they came in to liberate the Holy Land, slaughtering and killing, again, Jews and Muslims. They remained in control for only about 100 years, and then the Muslims came back in under Saladin and recaptured Jerusalem. And one of the things that Saladin did was he rebuilt the walls. And the walls that are there in Jerusalem today, not the Western Wall, but the walls skirting the city today, were built by Saladin about 1,000 years ago. And this is just one corner of it. That sphere there, it's known as the Tower of David. But really, it's just a minaret from a mosque, is what it was. But originally, but it's called the Tower of David. They continued to have control over it until 1517, when the Ottoman Empire took control of it, which was, even then, it's still another Muslim ruling party. And these are some pictures taking place between that rule when the Ottomans were there, even up until the time the British were there, and the British took over the Ottoman Empire in 1917. And they continued there till 1923 and 1948. Now, I mentioned that one other picture to that archway of that stairway going up. This is that place where I pointed out. That's the archway. So Temple Mount right up there, the top of it, right up there. And this was the archway for that bridge. And look at where the sand is, look at where the level of the ground is here. So just over the years, just dirt and rubble and sand and wind and collapsing buildings, one after another, right? And today, it's dug all the way back down. I showed you last week a picture of us standing on ground zero on the pavement right at that corner, right underneath that, where I was standing and showed you the stones from the temple that were thrown down and crushed the ground, and the booths where the money changers and the sellers of the animals were. That's where we're standing, right there at the bottom ground zero underneath where this arch is. And so they dug that down and excavated that.
That's like 30 or 40 feet under?
At least 40 feet, yeah, underground. Yeah. So the British continued over it and maintained it. And then in 1947, the British basically turned it over to the UN, and the UN gave the Palestine mandate to divide up Jerusalem in this fashion, like you see on that map there, where the green portion is the Arab state, and the yellow portion is the Jewish state. It might be a little hard for you to see, but I'll kind of outline it here. This is a yellow portion down here. That is all desert, even today. It's just basically desert. There's some cities down there, there's Beershebas down there, but it's basically all desert. Just totally uninhabited for the most part. There is a lot down at the bottom, like I say, a few little cities. And so then it's not even connected with the rest, and it's green over here, and then just this very thin sliver here, up to Haifa, Tel Aviv. That is about the distance from St. Petersburg to maybe Crystal River. And maybe only about as wide as Pinellas County. How defensible is that? You know, how many people can you cram into that? And then again, it's cut off with green there, and then just a little portion around the Sea of Galilee up in the north. And that was what it was originally. And then Jerusalem, as you see, it's around there, is an international zone. That was the original plan, was that nobody was going to rule over it, nobody was going to control it. It was going to be ruled over internationally. I guess the UN thought that they could do it. And that was going to be the plan. That was the original plan. Fortunately, that's not what took place. And so with that, the Jews, we accepted that. Even that. We said, okay, whatever. A penny is better than nothing, I guess, whatever. And so we took it. We said, okay. And the Arabs said, no, that's not okay. That's not enough. You're giving them too much. And went to war. And so Ben-Gurion, our first prime minister, he declared our independence. And right away we were attacked on all sides by Egypt, by Jordan, by Syria, by Lebanon, and helped by Iraq, and all these nations coming in and attacking us all at once. And fortunately, we won that war and ended up with considerably more land than that. We ended up with this much land, which is still much better. Still a lot of desert and still not a whole lot of land, but much better. At that point, Jerusalem was still under Jordanian rule. That striped area was under Jordanian rule. And Gaza was under Egyptian rule. And it remained that way until 1967, when again the Arab nations decided to attack us. And again we won in 6 days and won all of the West Bank area, as well as the Golan Heights, as well as all of the Sinai Peninsula. What? And Gaza, right. Could have left Gaza. But, and Gaza as well. And then actually, years later, when I think it was Rabin had peace talks with Egypt, gave them back Sinai Peninsula, Egypt refused to take Gaza back. They did not want Gaza. If you can keep Gaza, we'll just take the Sinai Peninsula. Was Begin? Okay, Begin. And that's how Israel ended up having to deal with Gaza for so long, because they didn't want to. And also Jordan. Jordan, didn't want the West Bank, and the Jordan said, no, we don't want it.
Do you think that was a big mistake on their part, not for taking it then?
Egypt?
No, Israel taking Gaza at that time and giving it, saying that they didn't want it. Don't you think that was a big mistake, because that left the enemy on their territory?
Well, they were there anyway. Just because you're ruling over it doesn't mean they don't live there anymore. So they'd still live there. But also in 67, the main thing was we were able to liberate Jerusalem. Coming through Zion's gate, it's all potholed up. It's still left potholed today for that reason. There have been other areas of the walls that were all, of course, also shot up, but they've patched all the rest, but they've left this as kind of a memorial and commemoration of that battle, of those wars, and in liberating, and they went through that, and were able to liberate the Western Wall and conquer. So Jerusalem Post, announcing that the old city has been captured. And then that's what Jerusalem looks like today, at least from one view, from the Mount of Olives, looking down. That was our group last year in Israel, looking down over the western, or the eastern wall, the eastern wall, the eastern gate, and the Temple Mount. And again, those city walls there were built 1,000 years ago by Saladin. So, what does the Bible then have to say after that? Well, it says a lot of different things, but there are, interesting, in the second part of the Bible, there are only 5 texts. I gave you a homework assignment a few weeks ago. I don't know how many of you did it. To look up all the places from Matthew to Revelation that mention Jerusalem. And I still encourage you to do it. Don't take my word for it. Do it, still do it. Also look up the word temple. Also look up the word, if you want, sanctuary. You can also look up the word Israel from Matthew to Revelation. But for the word Jerusalem, I've counted out of the 140-something different verses that mention Jerusalem, only 5 that refer to Jerusalem past the time when the disciples and Yeshua were living there in Jerusalem. So the vast majority of texts are talking about they went up to Jerusalem, they were there in Jerusalem, this event happened in Jerusalem, so-and-so lived in Jerusalem, whatever. But all referring to that time period. And only 5 verses again. I encourage you to check it out yourself and do it yourself and look up those other words as well. And so we're going to look at a few of them and see what it has to say. This is one of them. You have come to Mount Zion and to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, to an innumerable company of angels, to the great assembly and to the congregation of the firstborn who are registered in heaven, to God the judge of all, to Yeshua the mediator of the new covenant. So he invites us as we come to the Lord, as we come to him. He also invites us that we come to the Mount Zion, the eternal of the ages, the plan of all ages, God's desire of all ages, God's eternal and his lasting plan, his eternal plan, his final plan for earth and for Israel and for Jerusalem. To the city of the living God. where God established his name and where the Bible says his name will be established there before it was even found, even before God told us which city it was going to be. When he spoke to Moses and said, you will worship and you will sacrifice and you will put the temple in the city that I will show you and where I will place my name, he was referring to Jerusalem. Even in the bigger scale, the heavenly Jerusalem, because the temple was originally, the plan for the temple was shown to Moses what was in heaven. He showed him the heavenly Jerusalem, showed him the heavenly temple. And so you've come to the heavenly Jerusalem and to an innumerable company of angels. And then the great assembly, the general assembly of God's believers, the congregation, the Kihalah, the people of God, the congregation, the fellowship together, the family of God, the mishpocha, the congregation of the firstborn who are registered in heaven. That God claims us as his firstborn, that he has bought us. Remember, the firstborn child would have to be redeemed and bought. And so he has bought us, he has claimed us with his redemption price, with his sacrifice. And to God who is judge over all, that he is the ruler, that he is the commander over all things, that he has the final say in all things in our lives. And to Yeshua, who is our mediator, and he mediates the new covenant, the new promise with us, that he creates in us new hearts, new minds, new lives. And he writes his laws in our hearts and in our minds. Thus we shall be able to and empowered to obey him and walk in his ways. So that's one of the texts of the heavenly Jerusalem. Another text from Revelation says, he who overcomes, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God. So he who overcomes, the overcomers with the Lord. Again, the general assembly, the firstborn, those who are born anew, those who are reborn in the Lord, those who are overcomers, those who are partakers of the new covenant, the covenant of the Lord, where he writes his laws into our minds and into our hearts and transforms us. And actually, the new covenant is older than the old covenant. The new covenant goes back to God's original plan. The old covenant is only called old because it passed away. The old covenant was our own promises. God's covenant from, again, the very beginning is to Adam and Eve and to everybody. I will write my laws in your hearts and minds, and I will empower you to do these things. The old covenant is, don't worry, I can do it myself. The old covenant is, whatever you say, Lord, I will do. That's what we said. God told his commandments on Mount Sinai, spoke them from the mountain, and we said, foolishly, whatever you say, we can do. We'll do it. And we failed within even 40 days, not even 6 weeks. We couldn't do it. That's why he says the new covenant is not that you will do it, but I, the Lord your God, will do it in you. I, the Lord your God, will do it through you. I, the Lord your God, will put my mind in you. I, the Lord your God, will put my heart in you. I, the Lord your God, will write my laws inside you and put my spirit within you and empower you to walk in my ways, to be obedient, to gain victory, so that he that overcomes, we cannot overcome in our own strength, not in our own power, not in our own will, not in our own desire, not even in our best motives, in our best intentions. We cannot overcome without him. We can overcome as he overcame, because he lives within us and gives us the victory. He who is able to keep us from falling. Only him. Only he can do that. So to the overcomers, he who overcomes, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God. A pillar. God uses us to hold up a pillar in his temple. And he shall go out no more. We'll never have to leave his presence anymore. We'll never backslide again. We'll never turn from him again. Never falter again. And I will write on him the name of my God and the name of the city of my God. And again, he says, my name will be written there. And then here down to the eternal of the ages, it's the new Jerusalem. just as the new covenant trumps the old that was fading away. Eventually the old cobblestone will fade away, and the new Jerusalem will last for eternity, which comes down out of heaven from my God, and I will write on him my new name. So God writes the name of his city upon us. It's where we're from. It's where we are. It's who we are, right? We might think we're Americans or we're whatever, but like Abraham, he looked for a city and a country whose builder and maker was God. He was just a sojourner, even though he was walking through the land of Israel. He was just passing through, in a sense, looking for the heavenly and the eternal that never passes away. And the third text, and the fourth text says basically the same exactly as this one. And I, John, saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. It refers to the New Jerusalem as a place where God puts his name. His name is there. And as a bride. Now what does the Bible say is the bride of the Lord? Who is the bride of the Lord? People of God, right? The congregation of God, like we just read, the Kihalah, the people of God, the great assembly or the general assembly, the people of God. Right? That's the bride. So how come it says that the New Jerusalem is a bride adorned for her husband? Which is it? What do you call it when you have more than one wife? Bigamist. Yeah, is he a bigamist? He has two wives. He's got the city as a wife, and he's got the believers as his wife. Which one's the bride? What?
We are, because we're going to have the name of Jerusalem on us.
Right, okay, we are. And you say the New Jerusalem, and here it says the New Jerusalem, prepared as a bride. One says us, one says New Jerusalem. That's right. It's because we are in it. A city without people is nothing. Right? What would St. Petersburg be if we all moved out? It'd just be Petersburg. That's right. Yeah. That's like what is Babylon today? The city of Babylon today. It's just an uninhabited ruins. There's nothing. It doesn't matter that it had hanging gardens and that it was one of the glories of the world. It didn't matter what it was. Without people in it, a city is nothing. Even God's city is nothing without the people of God in it. So us inside it make the whole city as a whole. And again, we're the pillars of it, holding it up, making it something, making it God's bride, making it God's throne room. And then the amazingness of it. God's throne, wherever it is out in the universe, he's going to move it. And move it right down to this earth. Right down upon Jerusalem. Isn't that amazing? The fallen planet, the rebellious planet, the black spot in the universe, God puts his throne. And the city is laid out a square. Its length is as great as its breadth. It's equal on all sides, so it's a cube. Even its height, it's a cube. And he measured the city with the reed 12,000 furlongs. And some have estimated that. Depends on exactly how, there's some agreement, whatever discussion on how long a furlong is. But some estimates about 2,400 kilometers, which is about 1,500 miles. Some say 1,300 something. Some say 1,500. And some will say that's the length of the whole entire, each wall is that length. Some say no, that's what the whole entire perimeter is. So again, back and forth that way. But it says it will come down. Now this is a picture of a map of the what God promised to Abraham, from the river Euphrates to the river Nile. And so that dark blot there is how big that is. If you go from where it hits into the Persian Gulf, just kind of bring a line over this way up to where the Nile River comes into the Mediterranean, and then along the coast, and then up towards the headwaters over in modern Turkey of the Euphrates River. That was the original, what God promised to Abraham. Now, it's the New Jerusalem, and the Messiah is going to come down before the New Jerusalem lands in that spot, comes down, lands on the Mount of Olives, splits it in two, and makes a landing plane for the New Jerusalem. So as it is to now it's so hilly there and mountainous there, it wouldn't be able to lay flat. So he comes and he lands and he opens it up, makes a big wide valley, big enough for the New Jerusalem to land on it. Now, if the New Jerusalem was 1,500 miles, or anywhere from 1,300 something miles to 1,500 miles, if that's how big each length of each wall is, then the size would be even bigger than this. It'd be, almost the size of the border of the whole block, of the whole slide. That's about how big it would be. It would be even bigger than what God had promised Abraham. If you go by taking that dimensions and as the perimeter, and thus dividing it by 4, it's about 375 miles, and that dimension would be this big, as that green square. And if you tilt it on edge, it would be from one corner, from the Nile River, to the other corner, to the Euphrates River. And thus still fulfilling that the land is from one river to the other, and it would be over the entire what is Israel today, as well as over Sinai, as well as over Jordan, and Lebanon, and most of Syria, the New Jerusalem, and a good portion of the Mediterranean Sea. The New Jerusalem will land. And that's where God's throne room, that's where God's capital of the universe, the control center of the universe, will come. And so any dignitaries, any of the, you remember in the book of Job, it says the sons of God came together. All the meetings will be here. Anytime there's a galactic meeting where all the different representatives of all the different planets and created beings throughout the universe come, they're going to come here. Come there, in Jerusalem. Come to Israel. Come to this earth anyway. And come down here. And so God moves. Isn't that amazing? God's grace, God's love reaches out for the fallen one. Reaches out, even though there are 99 that have not left the fold, 99 other planets or whatever out there that might not have ever left or haven't left the Lord. And there's the one. He goes in search of the one, that one lost sheep. And God's eyes have been on us, the lost sheep of a world. And he comes after us, and he doesn't give up. And then he exalts that one and puts it up on his shoulder and brings it back and rejoices with the rest. Look, the one that was lost is now found. And so God will come, and he will exalt this planet and exalt this old Jerusalem and make it glorious in his sight, better than ever before.
Yeah, why have we been taught that when the city comes down, it will hover in the air above the earth and not touch down? Why have we been taught that for all these years?
I don't know.
Why
I don't know. It says her light was like a most precious stone, like a jasper stone, clear as crystal. And then he measured the wall, the thickness of the wall, 66 meters. That's about 144 feet of thickness for the wall. And the 12 gates were 12 pearls. And a great high wall and names written on them, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. And so, if a person's anti-Semitic, they're not going to be able to enter in through any of the gates. They'll have to try and climb over a wall or something like that. But the gates, each gate with a tribe of the tribes of Israel. And the streets of the city was pure gold, like transparent glass. Such pure gold, it's transparent. Not this tingy yellow stuff. Pure, transparent gold. That'll be what we walk on. And we think it's so important now.
The street, not streets.
Right, the main street.
People always say,
The main.
all the streets are being put.
Yeah, just the street of gold runs through the city. We're able to walk on it, on the pavement of pure gold, shining and reflective. And the city does not need the sun or the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives it light, and the Lamb is its lamp. So just the glory of just that city is so bright that it outshines the sun. Right? In the daytime, you can't see the stars. They're there, but you can't see them because the sun overshadows them. Well, the brightness of the city overshadows the sun. We won't see the sun. It's so bright. And again, we'll be able to see it galaxies away, see God's throne room, see the Jerusalem shining in all its splendor, because the Lord, He is the light. Again, we can decorate our houses and decorate ourselves and clothe ourselves and think, oh, we look so pretty and oh, our houses look so nice. Be nothing in comparison to the beautiful city, the New Jerusalem that God is preparing. Now, the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them were the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. And when you think of the 12 apostles, right, we can name some of them maybe offhand, right? John and Matthew and Peter. Judas, right? Well, his name won't be there. He's just replaced. But, right, there was a different Judas, right? Philip, Thomas, Bartholomew, right? Nathaniel, right? So that's about 7. Andrew, right? 8. James, yep. Matthias, right? Simon. Okay. Very good. Foundations holding them up. And when you think of all those names, though, we read a lot about what God did through Peter and what God did through John and what God did through James and writing books and different things. But the majority of those people, other than their names, nothing's written about them. But they still had a calling of God. Not everybody's up front. Not everybody is seen. Not everybody's name is known. But that doesn't mean we're not special in the Kihalah, the congregation of God, the city of God. Every name, every person is important. So He writes His city upon us. He writes the name of His city, and our new name, His new name, He writes upon us, claiming us as His own. Like when a person gets married, then the wife, the woman takes, the bride takes the name of the husband generally. And so we will take the name of God, our new name, as His bride, as His children. Each one is important in everything that God does through us, whether it's seen, whether it's known, or whether it's behind the scenes, like the majority of the disciples. The foundations of the wall of the city were adorned with all kinds of precious stones, beauty beyond compare. He doesn't even describe them all. And a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding from the throne of God and of the Lamb. It's right out of God's throne, right there in Jerusalem, right over the hovering Jerusalem. Water of life flows out. In Zechariah, it says this water goes down and then even makes the Dead Sea alive with fish and living, teeming, and nothing will be dyed anymore. No more oil spills, no more dead fish and all the other polluted birds and all those other problems. Clear as crystal, proceeding right from the throne of God.
In the Garden of Eden, there was the tree of life, and now it will be the river of life.
That's right, the river of life, and we'll also have the tree. The tree is on both sides. And on each side of the river stood the tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, yielding its fruit every month. So every month we'll be able to go and get a different fruit. One month it might be bananas, another month might be, apricots, another month might be peaches, another month navel oranges, another grapefruit. This is a big tree. It's so big, it's one tree, but it's so big that it's on both sides of the river. So it's got roots on both sides of the river, kind of like, one of these sequoias that they cut through and drive a car through. It's on both sides. It's got the river running through the middle of it, and it's got roots on both sides. Huge tree. So it can contain watermelon. It might have watermelon on it. We'll go pick a watermelon off the tree of life and take it home and eat that for a month and enjoy all of God's fruit. And there shall be no night there. No more darkness. No more sleeping. Won't have to sleep. We'll be up all the time. Partying all night long with the Lord. Dancing on the sea of glass. All day and all night. Rejoicing in God's love. Rejoicing in the city of God. And there shall be no more curse, but the throne of God and of the Lamb shall be in it. Several times it mentions that. The throne of God is there. God's throne in Jerusalem. How special it is to the Lord. Special, again, it becomes the center of the universe. And God will wipe away every tear from every eye, and there shall be no more death nor sorrow anymore. Nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away. That's what God's glory, just the city. We talked a little bit last week about the universe that we'll be able to explore, but just even our city home and the mansions that he's preparing for us in his city, in the New Jerusalem. Oh, what glory it'll be. Nothing is worth giving that up for. Nothing is worth coveting on this earth. The walls are filled with gems, and we covet these little things here on this earth. The streets are paved with gold, and we're so worried about the money and the gold and the silver and the copper and the brass and the tinsel of this world, and holding on to the things of this world. Nothing compares with the glory of that. And what makes it wonderful is not the river and not the tree and not the fruit and not the flowers and not the pavement and the walls and the pearl gates. What makes it wonderful? Because we could have all that if we had all that. But if we didn't have the Lord, it wouldn't be worth anything. Might as well just melt or become an ash heap as well. It's the Lord that makes it wonderful. It's the Lord that makes it glorious. Because he is there is what makes it desirable. And we need to have him now. It's having him now that makes that a possibility then. It's having the Lord and having him first and foremost over all things. Not worrying about our little concrete block houses, our little ticky-tack homes, and our little ticky-tack cars, these little matchbook cars that we drive around. It's all going to burn. It's all going to pass away. It's all going to be trumped by God's city and God's glory and God's new earth. Let go of the things of this world. Use them, maintain them for God while we have them here, but don't let them have us. Don't let them have you. Don't let them grab a hold of your heart. Nothing is worth holding on to here to exchange for the New Jerusalem and that eternity with God. And not only would it be, is the Lord what makes it special, but there's another element, again, much more important than the gold streets and the river of life and the tree of life and all that other beauty. It's other people. It's the great congregation or the General Assembly. It's the Kehillah, the congregation of God. It's the family of God. That's what makes it the bride. Without that, it's only just the groom. And the city would still be empty. God wants it to be one whole unit. And if we don't love our brothers and sisters here, we can't live with them here. No matter how big the New Jerusalem is, whether it's 375 feet on each side or 1,500 miles, or 1,500 miles on each side, it won't be big enough if we can't live with our brothers and sisters here. And then if there's not enough room, then one of us will have to be on the outside. And God will make sure it's the one that has the grudge. And if we both have grudges, then we'll both be on the outside where the gnashing at the teeth is. To be inside, we have to be with the family of God. There's only one bride. It's the people of God together, united together, fellowshipping together, working together, loving one another, ministering to one another. You know, and then when we go through crisis like Magella's going through now, or others are going through now, or Sharon who fell, or, you know, various things that we go through, we're able to lock together and help each other and minister to each other as much as we can and best as we can. Pray for each other and comfort one another. Because when we're not a part of a congregation, when we're not locked together, then there's nothing. Then when the tragedies come, and tragedies always come, who's there to help? I was reading a story. One rabbi was telling this couple that were wanting to get married. The lady was a part of the congregation. He said the husband needs to have a rabbi also. She said, well, he has a rabbi. He said, it doesn't matter if that rabbi is in Jerusalem or whatever. If he's not here to help you guys when you go through your struggles. Some people have rabbis that are dead for 300 years, you know, or someone who's in a book, or someone who wrote a book, or someone who is on a TV set. You know, the guy on the TV set or the guy on the radio, is he praying for you? I mean, you could send in your request, but you think he really, you know, just prays generally over it, or he has a lot of people praying? He's not able to minister for you and to you and with you. That's what the congregation of God is. That's what we see in the New Jerusalem. It's the congregation of the living God. It's the fellowship, one with another. It's bonding together. We can't have the Lord without having his brothers and sisters. We can't have the Lord without having his children. Right? You know, it's like trying to marry someone who's a widow or a widower and they got some young kids. You say, well, I want to marry you, but I don't want the kids. It doesn't work that way. We need to bond together and fellowship together and unite together, to minister to each other and to help each other and to lift each other up. As we pray together, if there's anything in your life that would keep you from this city, if there's anything that you love more than the Lord, anything that's more important, and we can know what's more important is by where our heart is. Are we obeying the Lord, or are there commandments of the Lord that we are putting aside because that thing, whether our job or our house or our finances or our whatever, our bills or cable TV or whatever it is that is keeping us from being fully committed to the Lord, being fully committed, united together with the people of God in the family of God. That is our God. That's idols. Covetousness is idol worship. So whatever we're coveting is our idol, is our God. Let nothing get between you and the Jerusalem, the heavenly Jerusalem, the new Jerusalem. Let nothing keep you from being the part of the bride of the Lord. As we pray together. Our Lord and our God, King of the universe, we want to be a part of your plan. We want to be a part of your eternal plan. We want to be a part of your city. We want to be pillars in your city. We want to be there holding each other up and holding your will up and holding your plan up. We want to be used by you and for your purpose. We want your name written upon us. We want your name and the name of your city written upon us. We want to be united with you. We want to marry you right now. We want to be married to you. And we want to cut off all other relationships, anything else that's more important to us than you, whether people, whether spouses, or whether children, or whether bosses or positions or material things or immaterial things, goals or desires, anything, Lord, that's more important than you. We want to surrender it at your feet. And we want you to be most important and all important in our lives. We want to unite with you. We want to be filled with your love. We want you to write your laws into us and upon us. We want your Spirit to come upon us, for you to manifest yourself out of us and through us, and for you to reveal your glory. And that we, as part of the New Jerusalem, will shine even brighter than the sun, reflecting your glory. In Yeshua's holy name, amen.